Hi, today we're going to be in Isaiah chapter 5, and we're going to look at two verses 11 and 12, as we continue our series and the revelation of God through this prophet Isaiah. We want to read again verse 12 and 13 in Isaiah 5. But they furnish wine and lovely music at their grand parties, lyre and harp and tambourine and flute, but they never think about the Lord or notice what he is doing. So my people will go into exile far away because they do not know me. Dear ones, I want to suggest to you that we're living in a day where I don't think there's ever been any more distraction, any more draw and pull on our time. The culture we live in celebrates so many things that are actually contrary, actually against the idea of focusing on what's really valuable and what's really important. And I suggest to you in another chapter over in Isaiah 6, we're going to get to that famous passage where Isaiah is in the Lord's house and he sees the Lord, right? There's so many things that happen in our lives. There's so much in our culture going on, Hollywood and movies and parties. You translate that first verse, furnish wine, lovely music at their grand parties, lyre, harp, tambourine, flute. Man, there's a lot of partying going on in our culture today, right? So many distractions, video games, you name it. There's a blank here. You fill it in with what distracts you. And I want to suggest to you that it's so vitally important that we learn to pay attention to God in every area, in every aspect, in every circumstance, in any and all situations of our lives. It's in our awareness of God that life is, because God is life. He gives life, and he gave us life, and he's the tree of life, and he is the way, the truth, and the life, Jesus said, right? He said they never think about the Lord or notice what he is doing. What a tragedy. What a tragedy. And somehow in our lives, I fear that we might fall into this same trap. I have learned in my own life to open my spiritual eyes and my spiritual ears and my spiritual heart everywhere I go to see what the Lord is doing. Recently, I was out at a conference, had the privilege to go and be at a conference, participate, and it was phenomenal. Great worship, great people, great move of God. And yet I can tell you that on the front end, there were some stumbling blocks to me. There were some things going on that didn't fit my grid, that didn't line up with my DNA. You know, there are tribes in the kingdom of God. There are tribes in Israel, and it's okay that we're a little different. It's totally okay. But if we're not careful, sometimes we'll judge each other for those differences, and those differences become obstacles that are, we deem, sometimes too insurmountable for us to stick around long enough to find God in and through each other. I'm so grateful for the grace of the Lord to enable me to stay in that process. And the Lord spoke to me very clearly and mightily. In fact, he connected some dots in my life that were 25 years old, transforming me. It is so vitally important that we learn to look to find God wherever we are. You see, I was able to stay and get what God sent me there to get because he said to me, son, be careful that you find me and look to see what I am doing. Isaiah said they never think about the Lord and they don't notice what he's doing. How many times have we missed what God is doing in our lives simply because we're not paying attention and we're not paying him attention? I remember going on my first missions trip to Poland, been on many before and many since, but we were sitting we just arrived at a location, and as my custom is, because I've learned this is my lifestyle, I sat down on a chair and I began to pray and just lean into God. God, what's going on here? And the Lord showed me a picture of in the darkness of night, and I heard this beeping of a truck backing up like a big commercial vehicle. And in my spirit, kind of had a sense it was a dump truck that was backing up, being filled and being and removing itself from that locality under the cover of darkness. And I shared it with this church I was there to minister to. And afterwards they said to me, you have no idea what you shared. There's a town in Poland literally named the Disappearing Town, where the Soviets came in, and after World War II, they mined under this village. They mined all the uranium, and they robbed this area of its treasure. But they did it so poorly that the city literally disappeared, and it imploded on itself. I want to tell you that broke the barrier and gave that group of people the understanding that God knows exactly who they are. And boy, were they hungry, and boy, did their ears open up to whatever else the Lord wanted to say to them, because I was willing and able to think about the Lord and notice what he was doing. Listen, I want to encourage you. You don't have to feel far away from God. He said, some of my people will go into exile far away because they do not know me. I want to say to you, you don't have to feel like a son or daughter in exile. You don't have to feel like you're in a faraway place from God. There is a place for you today to be able to open your spiritual eyes and see what God is doing. Jesus lived that way. He only did what he saw the Father doing. And you have been brought into the family of God as a son and daughter of God, Romans chapter 8, because of the work of Jesus. And we can do what Jesus did. He only did what he saw. You can see what Father's doing. You can open your spiritual ears and you can hear what Father's saying. Jesus only said what he heard Father saying, right? And Jesus was moved with compassion because he saw them as sheep without a shepherd, Matthew chapter 9. He could tap in with his spiritual heart and sense what was on God's heart. He had learned, as a man, he had learned to walk being aware of what God was doing. Beloved, I want to challenge you. Open your spiritual eyes today. Open your spiritual ears and open your spiritual heart to find God in every situation, in every circumstance, and in every moment of today.